Most of you already know about the latest kerfuffle in the world of high-energy physics. Over the past few years, physicists at the European Center for Particle Physics, known as CERN, have clocked some 15,000 neutrinos exceeding the speed of light. For more than a century, physicists have viewed the speed of light as the universal speed limit. Nothing can travel faster than 186,000 miles per second. The number itself forms the bedrock constant upon which Einstein's theory of special relativity stands. Granted, the neutrinos didn't exceed the speed limit by much. It took them 60 billionths of a second less time to travel 450 miles than it should have. Nonetheless, since the speed of light is as foundational to physics as a sun-centered solar system is to cosmology, the physicists decided to spread the word that something is wrong with either their experiment or our basic understanding of the universe. Here's the problem. In 1887, two scientists named Albert Michelson and Edward Morley established that the speed of light is constant. Building upon this foundational insight, Albert Einstein developed the now famous equation E equals mc squared. The amount of energy something contains is equal to its mass times c, the speed of light, squared. Since the speed of light squared is a very large number, a tiny bit of mass can be converted into a huge amount of energy. In the wake of this formulation, Einstein was given credit for the insight that led to the atom bomb. The speed of light also plays a key role in Einstein's special theory of relativity, which states that time and space are not absolutes, but instead are affected by motion. As objects increase their speed relative to each other, time slows down. At the speed of light, time stops. Einstein's insights into the universe in its largest dimensions eventually led to a bewildering new picture of reality called quantum mechanics, which attempts to explain the universe in its smallest dimensions. The physicist Brian Greene explains that quantum theory portrays reality as a haze of possibilities, especially at the subatomic level. When we make a measurement or perform an observation, Greene says, we force the myriad of possibilities to snap out of the haze and settle on a single outcome. But between observations, when we're not looking, reality consists entirely of jostling possibilities. So what does this mean for neutrinos caught speeding? The most intriguing possible explanation of this faster-than-light phenomenon comes from string theory, which attempts to reconcile the theory of relativity and its explanation of large interactions among gravity-light planets and so on, with quantum mechanics and its explanation of small interactions among photons, neutrinos, quarks, and the like. String theory suggests that in addition to the four dimensions of space and time that we know well, length, breadth, depth, and time, the universe contains up to 7 other dimensions that we haven't discovered yet. Here's the intriguing possibility. Maybe the super speedy neutrinos aren't traveling through time and space. Maybe they are taking a shortcut through one of the other dimensions. Wow. Wow. Isn't the universe fabulous? These super speedy neutrinos challenge our most basic assumptions about ourselves and our universe. They remind me of a poem by the contemporary American poet Gary Snyder. It's titled, "The Trail is Not a Trail." He writes, "I drove down the freeway and turned off at an exit and went along a highway till it came to a side road, drove up the side road till it turned to a dirt road full of bumps and stopped. Walked up a trail, but the trail got rough and it faded away. Out in the open, everywhere to go." Once in a while, if we are very fortunate, life invites us to leave the highway of our established routines and turn on to a side road leading to new places and new possibilities. Often the road gets bumpy. Sometimes we're forced to a complete stop. But if we keep going, scrambling up the trail as best we can, we eventually find ourselves out in the open with everywhere to go. Many of you know what it's like when, by necessity or by choice, you leave the highway and have to scramble to find your way. A foreclosure notice, a grim diagnosis, an unfaithful spouse or a wayward child, an untimely restructuring or an unworkable reassignment. The trail gets rough, and then it fades away. But somehow you muster the courage and garner the strength to keep going. And eventually you find yourself out in the open again, with everywhere to go. The same dynamic holds true for religions and for congregations. Here on the cusp of the Jewish New Year, at the outset of a new church year, I'd like to say why I think we as a congregation have everywhere to go. The religious equivalent of the speed of light, the cornerstone constant upon which the architecture of faith has been built over the past 3,000 years, is the presence and power of a supernatural God. The religions of the West, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, along with their various permutations, are based on a belief that God exists above and beyond the realm of nature. God commands and controls. Not only can God create the universe, God can impregnate a virgin, heal a favored believer, and resurrect the dead. But as we've studied the universe, we've come to the inescapable conclusion that the universe isn't set up this way. The laws of nature are not subject to change without notice. The idea of a supernatural God, like the idea of an earth-centered universe, takes us down a dead-end road. Some people today including many leading scientists, argue that religion is therefore unnecessary. If God isn't supernatural, they insist, then the idea of God and the role of religion are obsolete. This is sloppy logic. In fact, if God isn't supernatural, then religion becomes even more important, not less. With a supernatural God who makes all the rules and hands them down to humanity, religion is merely obedience in fancy clothes. But if God is not supernatural, then religion has a serious role to play. Religion is the process of taking everything we know about the universe into account and creating a life of meaning and purpose within it. As for God, God is not a person like the Pope or an object like an apple, but rather an experience, like the experience of beauty. We use the term God to describe certain kinds of human experience. Relativity theory tells us that the past and the future don't exist. Yet we need to account for our sense that they do. Our use of the term God points toward our sense that the past doesn't vanish and the future is possible. Our experience of God is the experience of being connected, ultimately, to everything. Bolstered by faith in this experience of God, we have everywhere to go. What do these insights mean for Unitarian Universalism? This past June at our denomination's General Assembly, I spoke to a standing room audience about the challenge of being religious in the modern world. I spoke about my conviction that Unitarian Universalism has the potential to become the church of the new millennium. In order to do so, however, we need to take ourselves far more seriously as a religious tradition, which means defining ourselves by the theological commitments we have in common, rather than by the many ways in which we differ. What might our common commitments be? You can find a brief description of some of them inside the front cover of your order of service. Grounded by a belief in the necessity of religion and the importance of religious community, they include a commitment to worship as our foundational spiritual practice, to being personally accountable for our own beliefs and actions, as well as to developing a discipline and an ethic of gratitude. Why gratitude? For Jews, the defining discipline of faith is obedience. To be a faithful Jew is to obey the commands of God. For Christians, the defining discipline is love. To be a faithful Christian is to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. For Muslims, the defining discipline is submission. To be a faithful Muslim is to submit to the will of Allah. In the same way, I believe the defining discipline of Unitarian Universalism should be gratitude, which isn't merely a matter of saying thank you all the time. Rather, gratitude is the discipline of acknowledging our utter dependence on the people and world around us, and the ethic of fulfilling our obligation to other people and the natural world in return. Impelled by a religious sense of dependence and obligation, we have everywhere to go. And what of us as a congregation? For 18 years, I have walked through the garden, climbed the stairs to the second floor each morning, and turned left. Beginning a couple of weeks ago, I began taking a new path to a different office. My new office is the one Forrest occupied for more than 30 years. 5 years ago this month, Forrest was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. 2 years ago tomorrow, we gathered in this sanctuary to commemorate his death and celebrate his life. Along the way, we also dealt with economic downturns and financial deficits, conducted a broad-based congregational assessment, and adopted a strategic plan, and grappled with the unsettling reality that our staff is too small and our financial resources too meager to achieve the strategic goals that we have set for ourselves.